Well, thank you very much for choosing to watch this video presentation, and thank you for your interest in robots in nursing. And before I tell you a little bit about my travel fellowship and some of the insights on robots in nursing, which was sponsored by the Winston Churchill Memorial Trust, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a cardiothoracic nurse by background and worked my way through various roles, including perhaps my favourite role as ward sister in a coronary care unit, and then became a director chief nurse in a number of hospitals, starting in Swindon, working in East Kent, and then more latterly in the Oxford acute hospitals. I've also worked in community and in private health care, helping people to deliver nursing care in both people's homes and across London. So now I'm currently working as a registered nurse on the governing body of a CCG, that's a commissioning organisation about buying care, and my role is a little bit like a part-time non-exec director. But my most recent love is my professional doctorate in nursing. I am absolutely loving the indulgence of spending time thinking about what nursing is and what it means to be a nurse and how we can be better at being nurses and better provide for our patients. It's that led me into this topic, but let me tell you, the topic came from a colleague, and that colleague suggested I should be looking not at what things happen in the past, but looking at the future and how nurses should rise to the challenge. She suggested I looked at the role of nurses with robots in the future. So, we're excited about this as a possibility when she suggested it. Well, I have to confess I wasn't. My first reaction was, actually, I think I know what I think about robots. But of course, as a researcher, it's not about what I know, it's about what other people think and what they know. So I started to read around the topic. And I found, firstly, a number of articles that talked about substitution, talked about whether a robot could do the job of a nurse. And then I found an article, which I'll quote later, that actually talked about a call to action, that nurses need to look at this because if we don't, somebody else will, and it's about our future, it's about the future of nursing. And then I became excited. I started to think about this is a good topic to look at. Firstly, because it goes to the very heart of nursing and what nursing is. And secondly, it challenges us about what it means to be human. So why do we need to look at the role of robots in nursing? Well, some of that might seem quite obvious. We know that the healthcare needs internationally are growing and are about to outstrip the availability of nursing and other resources to cope with that. Now, I'm really encouraged that through COVID, more people are thinking about nursing as a career, but there's still set to be a global nursing shortage. And at the same time, in terms of technology, there is an opportunity to look at. The technological development is fast and exponentially expanding, particularly in the area of robotics and artificial intelligence. And the article by Archibald and Bernard that talked about a call to action for nursing, talked about nursing having a tendency to respond rather than to anticipate. So this presentation is about anticipating change. And what I'd like to do is take you through some of the insights that I learned from taking the time to actually look at what robotics might look like in the future. And I'd like to share those with you. So firstly, and this was from my first stop, which was in Macau at a robotic conference. I think I was the only nurse there. I asked the question, what is a robot? Now I've shown you a picture of a robot, but actually a robot doesn't have to come in this shape. But a robot, according to Japanese roboticists, has to have a motor. It has to move about. It has to have sensors so it can sense and see the environment. And it has to have a computer. And here's where I differentiate from artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence doesn't have to be embodied. However, I think in the future it's really unlikely that we will have robots without any artificial intelligence. They will have the ability to learn and to choose what they do. I'll come on to that later. What about the shape? Does it have to be human shape? I asked one of the roboticists or robot developers, why does everything have to look like a human? Quite simple, she said. They have to operate in an environment that's designed by humans for humans. But here there's a difference between what's humanoid, which is actually looking in appearance as a human, as you see the walker robot in front of you. That looks human shape, but it's definitely not a human. And then android, which is actually built to mimic a human. And here's the interesting thing. Us as humans like and accept robots more frequently when they look more like us. Isn't that interesting? However, the more they look like us, there comes a point when they look almost identical and we can't tell the difference. And at that point, humans reject robots. It's called the uncanny valley. And it's actually because we think we are suspicious of actually something that looks human but isn't. The other area of robots, it may not be a human shape, it could be a dog or a cat. And also there's the exoskeletons. These are robotic trousers or robotic arms that help people to learn to use those limbs again. My second insight was about robots not replacing nurses. Now, interestingly, in contrary to some of the early nursing press I saw, all roboticists, all the people who are developing robots were very clear. In the next 50 years, there is no way that robots can replace nurses. And the reason is quite simple, or actually it's about the difference between being complex or complicated. So complicated is a little bit like a map. It's intricate, it's hard to understand, but with machine learning, with a computer, it can be understood. But complex is like nursing. It's something that's constantly changing, it's unpredictable. And this is best exemplified by a conversation I had with a robot developer. Why is it different, he said, why are you looking at this when actually we don't even know what nursing is or does? Well, I talked to him a little bit about what nursing is or does, and he said, well, tell me what a nurse does just for an hour. So I related a recent story. I related how I cared for a patient, and as I turned the patient to wash their back, I was able to talk to them about how what they knew about their condition, what they understood, what their family reaction to was. How much pain were they in? What helped the pain? And also I was checking her skin for the integrity of the skin and looking for anything that I should be concerned about as a nurse. Ah, said the roboticist, so what nurses do is multitask. They have parallel tasks. No, I said, it's interrelated. It's actually nursing is something where you do all of these things all at once. They're interrelated, they are constantly changing, and it's unpredictable. And that's why robots in the short term cannot replace nurses. My next insight was actually came from some discussions at the robotic conference. And the question was posed, which are safer? Is it humans or robots? Now I know from patient safety work that actually, if we were to do the same thing, all in the same way, we're likely to make mistakes, perhaps once, twice in 1,000. If we're giving medications, we are likely to make errors, perhaps once, twice in every 1,000 times we give a medication. But actually, when you think of robots, I think we expect a higher level of accuracy. We expect them never to get it wrong. And I'll come back to this later. Now, we already know that in imaging, in pictures, artificial intelligence already exceeds human capability in terms of speed. It can look at things quicker. And in terms of accuracy, in terms of imaging. So I heard a Professor Sung talking about how he, as a gastroenterologist, takes about 5 or 6 hours to review an endoscopy imaging or the recording. The artificial intelligence did it in 45 minutes and was more accurate, and because of the magnification, actually could pick out areas that he may have missed. And he said that's because how we learn. We learn as nurses, as doctors, by what goes wrong. Now, actually, we remember what goes wrong and we take actions to make sure that doesn't happen again. But for robots with artificial intelligence, the artificial intelligence has all of the understanding of what might go wrong, and actually in a very deep learning way, a deep way of lots of data, can spot that and therefore is more accurate. Kirsten Grumman also talked about how robots learn, and I thought this was very interesting. She talked about actually robots used to learn by big data sets where humans had labelled things like a chair, thousands of chair pictures as a chair. However, now they teach robots to learn by getting them to watch videos. And when they watch videos, they look at what people, humans, do with those objects. Do they press the light switch? Where do they press it? Do they turn a page? And it's these videos rather than static pictures that are teaching robots to learn. Isn't that interesting? How do we as nurses learn? Well, sometimes it's by watching others. Sometimes it's about spotting the difference. And sometimes it's looking at what to investigate. Secondly, robots are learning to anticipate what they can't see. So as they move into a room, they were teaching robots to look around and then choose where to look intelligently. Actually, that's very similar to how we as nurses have to survey a patient and decide what to investigate. But here's the difference. I think there's a difference between how nurses and robots think and link. And the thinking and linking that we do as nurses, so we think about what we see and how it links to other things and how we make sense and value from our experience is, I think, what makes us different. Now let me tell you about one of the most risky points. There was a lot at the conference about how robots hand over to humans, and this is the most risky time. In front of you, I'm showing you two pictures. One, unfortunately, is where an Uber self-driving car is about to hit a pedestrian, and sadly, that pedestrian died. But look on the right. This is the person who's supposed to take over from the robot in the car, from the automatic car at the point just before the impact. Unfortunately, that person's looking down. Now, actually, if you're in a driverless car, you wouldn't expect to have to be able to take over. And therefore, whilst this lady was charged with manslaughter, the actual time of robot to human handover is the most risky. How do humans get ready to take over when they don't know they're going to have to take over? And how do they survey the whole environment? It's just not going to be possible for a robot to say, sorry, I'm out of ideas, here you are, human. We have to think through what that means and how we manage it. I was impressed by the conversations about automated cars and actually how self-driving cars have 5 levels of automation, or 6 if you take 0. And this might have some implications for nursing, that actually the levels of automation that we need to go for and we need to decide what's appropriate might not reach full automation where a robot substitutes for a human nurse, but it may be that actually there's some assistance. And you'll see halfway through, you'll see me with a walker. That's a robot. That's a robot because it moves, it senses, and it helps people walk uphill. It stops people running away because the robot stems has some brakes when someone's either not holding it or actually going downhill. Clever stuff. But actually, to use robotics, there has to be a technology adoption. We have to use technology. And I went to a nursing home and was a little worried to see a lot of robotic equipment on the shelf in the nursing home not being used. And that's because it has to be time-saving, easy to use and reliable. Now, this nursing home is particularly good at working out what works and what doesn't. They showed me a patient dryer. It didn't work because the patient had to stand motionless for about 45 seconds to be dried. And that's not nursing. That's not how patients need their care. But actually they found that the skills of capability and flexibility were key to being able to adopt equipment. So that's something for us to think about as we move on to think of robots. Now, these are my favourite pictures. This is a robot. It's a robot that helps someone exercise. And one of the key learnings from my trip was about how robot interaction increases human to human interaction. Because the robot is moving this lady's limbs, because the robot is helping her to exercise, look at the relationship between the physio and the patient. That's why I'm interested in this subject. If it increases human interaction, we can harness it. But actually, it's more than that. We have to be really clear about what nursing is. And here I am with a group of colleagues from Flinders University, where we talked about what's really key is that nurses actually articulate what nursing is. They articulate how robots can help and where human needs to be deployed rather than a robot. So I'd like to say thank you very much for watching this presentation. I think it's really important that we anticipate the opportunities and challenges of robotics in nursing. I think we have to start. And if you're interested in more, then don't hesitate to contact me. I'd love to talk more about it. Thank you.